Welcome, Incorrigible new and old, to the inaugural
Wow.
episode of Master Dungeon Master. I, of course, am your MDM, Leland Steele, with all of the members of the Incorrigible Party cast. If they would love to introduce themselves, please go ahead.
Hey everyone, my name's Alana, or AJ, and I play Opal Toggle Sprocket.
Opal Toggle Sprocket.
My name is Bill. I play Hellcruck Tread, but sometimes I get confused and think that I'm playing Rumkey.
That's true.
I'm Emily. I play Kailia and Seychadal. There's a whole story to that.
And I'm John, and I play Rumpke. I never get confused with Hellcruck.
And of course, the person of the hour who's brave enough to stumble through our first episode with us. If you would love to introduce yourself and kind of explain who you are and what you do within the TTRPG space.
Sure. So I'm Dillon, head of critical crafting. I never get to play anything because I'm the forever DM and I'm constantly writing stuff instead of being able to play it. What we do, we create 5e content for all kinds of different stuff, for player options, for GM options. We kind of specialize in unique, new, and different things, a lot of variant rules, a lot of kind of fun stuff that builds back in a little bit more crunchiness into 5e for those that want it, and also simple enough that those who don't like crunchy things can get something really cool. We also create 3D printable files for people, and we sell those as physical copies, as well as stickers, pins, and books. So we do a little bit of everything. We've been doing this since 2021, and I think we just passed our 2,000 page mark as far as content goes, which we're a team of basically one full-time person, two kind of part-time-ish when they can help out people. Well, I should rephrase that. One full-time person, which is me, a partner in crime who would be full-time if he could, which is my buddy Cameron, which I owe him so much. His brother Connor, who does some of our supplementary writing, and then my wife Sarah, who does some of our editing and keeps me sane as can be. And yeah, so with that, we've been producing a ton of content. I think, and I told you I would go on and on here, but I think I looked it up the other day. Wizards of the Coast produces something like 800 pages of content every year with their entire team, and we create 666 with our entire team. So I don't know
Wow.
what that says, but there you go. We don't sleep much. That's
Do you specifically try for 666
No,
pages?
that's just how the math came out. And then I was like, oh, that might be a bad thing. I don't know here. So anyway, I ramble. But yeah, to shorten it down, if you need a soundbite, we make 5e content and 3D printable miniatures on top of additional content for role-playing games. There we go. Boom.
Woo! 2,000 pages. Congrats.
Very well. You forgot the word inaugurable, though. So
Inaugurable.
You had to fit that in
Inaugurable.
somewhere.
Yes.
Well, John and I...
Can I ask a question real quick?
I'm not done with the intro.
Shut up for a minute. Dylan,
Oh, wow.
do you have some of your STL files? Are they creatures that are in the stories that you write?
Every single one of them is specific to our stories. So our encounters, our monsters, our player classes, all that. Every STL we make is accompanied by either a stat block or a player class or a race, etc.
Leland, you may continue.
Well, now I want to talk more about the minis because I really like
Me too.
the blank set. Like the blank, what is it? Like a species or like who are the blank? Can you explain the lore for the blank?
Yeah. So it's funny. The blank kind of came about because I had a player that hated magic in Dungeons and Dragons. I know. They despised it. They were like, I hate all the spell casting classes. I hate the power curve. I hate spells. I hate all of it. I want to get rid of it. And I was like, that's an interesting take.
That's just real life.
Let's see. Yeah, and he wanted a very like gritty, realistic kind of thing. And I was like, okay, let's see what happens if we introduce that. And the thought process was, if you have people who can alter time and cast fireball and blow people up, and you have another faction that hates magic and is completely opposed to it and doesn't want it at all, how are they going to fight back against people who like or use magic? And the thought process was, well, if you don't have magic, you're going to rely on science and technology to get by. So then we created a faction of people who are incredibly advanced scientifically, who have power armor and laser guns and this kind of, it's essentially magic with science, right? But they will not use magic. They hate it, and they're trying to murder all of the spellcasters. And that is the faction that's known as the Blank. So they're very high tech, a little bit grimdark. So power armor, chainsaw swords, robots, mech suits, like all this kind of stuff, to let people bring in some kind of really big, crazy sci-fi stuff, and at the same time, still have, you got your wizard that's casting fireball at him, but we gave them a lot of anti-magic abilities, a lot of like, some people really hated this, but we gave them like focused murder spellcaster abilities. So like our Mage Slayer stat block, I think deals like triple or quadruple damage to a creature that can cast spells, with the whole purpose being
Wow.
like they are designed to kill spellcasters. Like that's their whole faction. So yeah, so that kind of became it was funny because it literally stemmed out of a player being like, I don't like spellcasters. I'm like, cool, we'll give these guys guns. They don't get spells. They get high tech stuff. And then the party, after I went into all this work of designing it, right, decided, no, we don't want to side with them. We're going with the magic guys instead. And so then that, became the evil faction. But we've developed some stuff now so people can play as sort of Blank faction characters or whatnot.
Yeah, my first D&D character was a wizard, and I'm very much partial to wizards as a result because I played him for years. But I'm torn because I do really like the sounds of the sci-fi vibes and the high-tech science. That's very cool.
Well, we all know wizards or spellcasters are squishy. So having armor and guns and everything seems like you're at a distinct disadvantage being a spellcaster. Unless you really know your stuff and get it off quick, right?
Well, and so we tried to develop a few things that would say like, okay, how can we make a new kind of, subclass, classes, whatever, that would specifically target spellcasters and that would have, kind of, we call them warps. So it's essentially another magic system, but it's with science, right? With the idea being you can't dispel it, you can't use anti-magic on it, like anti-magic sphere does not affect it, kind of a deal, but you can get access to it as part of this faction that's known as the Blank. And then they have a whole storyline with, trying to seek out spellcasters, root them out, kill them, get rid of any kind of like magical creatures, get rid of any kind of magical technology, or if they can't destroy it, put it in a facility somewhere where they can maintain it. And it's kind of grown exponentially from like where we originally thought. And we thought that people would view them as the bad guys because they're bad guys. Like if they see a kid casting a cantrip, they're like, shoot that child, kind of a deal. But people were like, we love these guys. We love their technocratic insanity. And so now we're having to make more and more like player options and adventures that portray magic users as the bad guys, and kind of, okay, now the tech and we did that in the beginning. We said, hey, the Blank, like, yeah, they're bad. Like they're not good dudes. But at the same time, they build hospitals. They bring in technology that gets rid of disease or like electricity to your town. So like a lot of people are willing to say, yeah, we don't need the shaman down the road when you're bringing in, plumbing. Like great, kind of a thing. And then we did the same kind of opposite with the other factions called the Arcanum, which is kind of like the people in the Mages War book. The people who are trying to defend magic. So they have sort of an underground railroad system for getting spellcasters out of Blank occupied regions. But at the same time, they're not guiltless either. I mean, they're just as likely to cast fireball and blow up a bunch of civilians if they know they're going to target a high ranking Blank officer as they are to try and help people out. So a lot of morally gray, kind of there isn't really a good guy's side. And much of that stemmed from community kind of, we thought people would think these are the bad guys, and people were like, we love them. We're like, okay, I guess they're both bad guys then.
Well, morally gray is kind of where the Incorrigible Party operates the majority of the time. So, sounds right up
This
our
campaign
alley.
too. We're all gonna like each other. We'll be a team. We're not gonna hide anything from each other. It's not happening, and it's very hard. I don't know.
What are you hiding from us?
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Yeah, Opal. What's Opal
Wait a
talking
minute.
fucking hiding?
I've been completely honest.
So have we.
So have we. the 2 for 1.
John's suspiciously quiet.
I have nothing to say.
I really like that idea. Do you have a blank character that has like a Men in Black gun? Like erasing
Oh,
some
like a memory.
memories?
So we don't have a Ooh, now I gotta think. Not a memory erasing gun. We do have. So that it reminded me. We do have epic spells. So like the Arcanum, and that was the other thing is we said okay to counter the high tech, we introduced something called epic level spells. So it's beyond ninth level spell casting, and normally it will require something insane. So either like the sacrifice of 10,000 humanoids or whatever it is, and then it will do something like you can remove all the memories of everyone in this town, or you can transport, this city into whatever location you want. And when it appears, if there's stuff there, that stuff is probably not there anymore, kind of a deal. So not a memory altering warp specifically, but yes, we do have some stuff similar to that. And actually, our latest Patreon release, which is Lazarus the Time Casino, you can gamble with years of your life, memories, or money in this sort of advanced high tech sort of magic sort of science casino, and you can like lose your memories as part of like bets that you place with people and that sort of thing. So
That's interesting.
we do a lot of weird stuff. That's kind of our deal.
We like that. We like weird.
Yeah, we generally do. So as I was saying before, Emily so rudely interrupted me with a perfectly valid question to our guest. John and I got to meet the team at Origins Game Fair in 2024. Kind of briefly, obviously, as you do as you're perusing the booths. And then you were very kind enough to send us some material, and we got to play through a bit of the Folk Tales of Gristwood for a Halloween one-shot that we all had a great time playing. So obviously you do kind of not just the super weird stuff. I mean, Gristwood is kind of weird and fucked up, but Gristwood is like also is like very still like fantasy based too, right? So
Yeah.
it does seem like you have a bit of a spectrum as far as like genre and playing with genres.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that when we started the company, I said that we wanted to do was kind of focus on a few different areas, but make it a wide enough sort of net that everyone would kind of get what they wanted. So we've done a variety of things. We've done dinosaur releases, we've done Arctic, desert, underground, Halloween, sort of holiday themed stuff. We've done outer space with our Hollow Expanse stuff. We've done sort of Call of Cthulhu madness stuff. We've done underwater. So we tried to say, hey, let's get as many environments as we can. And we've really strived to say, okay, we're going to make something that is able to be dropped into any campaign, but also has references back to our lore so that if someone's like, okay, I want to run the critical crafting like world, there are tie-ins in every single release to the point that now I'm having to put like further reading, see 6 different releases for like additional information on this region or this faction or this group of people.
Yeah, wait till you hit 3,000 pages.
Yeah, exactly. So, and all of it's backlogged too, which is my Google Drive hates me because every month it's like syncing 92,000 files, and I'm like,
That's so many.
So yeah, so like patrons that $13 they get 2,000 pages of 5e content, and yeah, it's nuts.
Oh, they get it all when
They get all of
patron.
it. They get everything, all the backlog. They get everything. So yeah, we've been trying to like make 5e D&D affordable, and we're like we can operate on it, and if other people can put in money and like make it work for them, then great, kind of a deal. It doesn't cost us anything to just other than my time to sit and watch it sync for 12 hours being like, come on, go Google Drive. But yeah, so we put out a bunch of stuff. We put out a ton of different content. The biggest thing is we have been beginning to tie in more of the blank and more of the arcanum from our Mages War Kickstarter because we had such a large fan base come in who was really interested in that type of content that we said, okay, what we can start doing is, hey, we've got our dinosaur content, or hey, we've got our desert content, or our Arctic content, or our Underdark content, but we tie in a couple things from, the Arcanum or from the blank from that Mage's War book that then they have sort of a tie-in to say, cool, all this stuff works together. It's part of this existing lore. It's not just disparate pieces all over the place, and it all kind of makes sense as one thing. So you're right. We do fantasy stuff. We do a ton of fantasy stuff. We do some sci-fi stuff. We do everything. We literally do everything.
Well, you mentioned Mage's War a few times. So is that essentially the Mage's War is like the culmination of these two factions and kind of thing? Is that what it really is playing out as?
In a sense, yes. So what we've done, because I've had experience working with other people on their Kickstarters before, and I've seen some of the pitfalls of like, hey, we're gonna make this big product, and then, well, what do you have? And it's like, we have an idea. It's like, cool, but so our big goal was say, look, we have we already have the content, right? We've got 2,000 pages of content. All we want to do is take that content, combine it together, like some of it, take a section of the content, combine it together, and release it as a physical product. And that's kind of what the money for the Kickstarter was for. So the idea with that one was, hey, we're going to take Machinations of the Blank, Magic and Mayhem, and The Death of Magic, which was 3 releases over 3 different months. And we're going to combine those together into one book. We're going to add some errata. We're going to add some new art. We're going to add some new tables and stuff. We're going to reflow the formatting, and we're going to create a physical book out of those 3 releases because they are very much Arcanum and Blank focused. Our future kind of idea is to do the same thing with similar content. So maybe we take 3 desert releases and we say, boom, here is a desert oriented book, or 3 dinosaur releases and here you go, here is a dinosaur release book. And so it cuts down a lot on the amount of time that's needed after the Kickstarter funds to release it. That said, there's still a lot that goes into it. There's still a lot of editing and reformatting and reflowing and adding art and all this fun stuff that we are having to do. But yeah, so the goal of the Mage's Word is to say, hey, here's an introduction to kind of our most popular and our most unique sort of thing that exists in our world, which is this conflict between high magic and high technology, and present here is a book of that content. We're looking probably in 2026 to launch a second one because we're going to have like 6 more releases that all have to do with the same kind of deal and go, okay, here's part 2,
I mean, take what's working and run with it, right?
Yes, and that's the big thing is Kickstarter has really helped us to build a dedicated fan base where like, so a good example would be like for fellow creators out there, Instagram is great for getting a bunch of people who follow your content and like your free stuff, but they like your free stuff. Where Kickstarter then, these people have purchased the content. They're the ones that are paying for it. And so when they see, hey, here's a part 2 of that, or here's more of what you have already paid for, they are much more likely to try and support something like that. So it's helped us to, we initially started the fan base with a lot of the freebies and that kind of thing. And then Kickstarter kind of allowed us to spur that more into okay, we're going to focus our content not entirely. Like we just did a Feast of Yule, which is a whole Christmas theme. We had Santa Claus, like as it wasn't actually Santa Claus, but Yule, the outsider, who if you kill him, there's a death clause where you come back as him and all this fun. So like we do all kinds of stuff, but we were like, well, we can focus some of our energy at least a couple months a year on the Arcanum and the Blank, this Mage's War stuff to move that forward into more content that people who are actually purchasing the product will want.
So you have minis that go along with all this. Who do you do the sculpting yourself? Do you have artists to do that?
So I'm the creative director, founder, creative director, editor, one of the writers, formatter, you name it, I have a hand in doing it. And it's funny because actually I've had a few people that are like, oh, I thought it was only one person. And I was like, are you insane? There's no way. There's no way. So we put out 7, well, let's see. So 5 stat blocks, all of them fully arted. And then normally a subclass and a race, also fully arted. And then spells and items, usually one of each of those gets art. And then sometimes we'll do sigils, which is like augmentations of items, grafts, which is another thing that you can do to augment your player. Again, lots of variant stuff, so people can actually build cool characters instead of here's another 5e. I pushed a button on D&D Beyond and it generated it, kind of a deal. But yeah, so we have a ton of different stuff. And yes, minis. I do not do the sculpting myself, but I do all the creative direction for it. And we do really big stuff. We've got all kinds of minis. And we actually recently are in talks with our local game store to get our stuff sold there, which would be great because right now the only place you can get physical stuff is at conventions because we have not figured out shipping yet, which is on my list, but my list is very, very long of things that have to be done. So
Yeah, there's a lot of artists listed on your website, so I'm assuming those are people that do the different
yes,
art.
so that is something that I was creative director for a couple other companies before this, and one thing as an artist myself that I really disliked was that there was a tendency to hide artists from the community with the intention of keeping prices down and with retaining artists instead of having them essentially get poached. And my thought process has always been if they're getting poached or they're getting paid more, then either we're not treating them right or they're getting an opportunity that they should have. So I have always been very upfront about saying I'm going to put our artists out there as much as possible, list their links, list their profiles. They're actually listed in every single release. So any release that an artist has worked on, their name is listed in our release, and every single artist we work with is also listed on our website with a link to their, either LinkedIn or ArtStation or whatever. Because again, I'm somebody who I think, the tide raises all ships, and I want to help support other artists. I don't want to have them stifled. Just like as a writer, I do a lot. Most of my income, honestly, does not come from critical crafting. It comes from freelance writing. And if someone is putting me out there, I am much more likely to be like, cool, I'll give you a little bit of a deal because you're putting me out there. So it just sort of depends, right? But it is something that I've always been a big believer in saying, okay, if somebody is doing work for us, we're not going to hide them behind a wall. We're not going to keep them away from people. We're going to let people know. And people will come to me a lot and say, hey, who are your artists? Like, who are you working with? And I'll give them a list or I'll send them to the website. The one thing I don't tell people, because I get asked this a lot, is what the artist rates are. And the reason that I do not do that is because a lot of artists will give different people different rates. And that could be dependent on, are they easy to work with? Or are they hard to work with? Are they asking for a lot or asking for little? Is it a bulk deal? Is it not? Did my rates change over the last 5 years that I've worked with this guy? Is he my buddy? Isn't he? So I've been asked that a lot. And I always say, hey, I don't, disclose artist rates. I can tell you generally what most artists I work with are being paid, and that's about as much as I can tell you, kind of thing.
I mean, your website lists over 50 people. Like, it's pretty incredible. And their links right there, like whatever picture they want.
Yeah, there's a ton of them. And honestly, there's going to be more because I update it every couple of weeks or every couple of months, and there's more that are getting added here. So, some of them obviously we don't work with anymore. There's stuff where either an artist becomes too busy and so they can't, or they become at a level where they're outside of our price range. We've had a few artists that worked with us and now they work for Disney. And so it's like, well, I can't afford you anymore. I'm glad that you're, doing well.
You're part of their journey, yes.
Yeah, I'm not doing that well, but I'm glad you are, kind of a thing. Yeah, one actually now works for Wizard of the Coast. So it's one of those things where they are able to sort of grow, and I fully I want that for our artists. I think that there especially now with people using AI crap and all that jazz, supporting our other artists is a really big passion of mine. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of work. I mean, when sculpting minis, and people just don't appreciate the amount of time it takes for artwork in general, but especially things like that. I mean, they expect things to be very cheap and quick. They just it's just magic, and you got to pay for it. That's how they make their living, right?
oh yeah.
I know nothing about, so you're saying sculpting. So someone sculpt something and then it's like analyzed and turned into an STL? Like, I have no idea how this works.
So usually they will sculpt an actual digital file. So they'll use ZBrush or Blender or whatever, and they will create a three-dimensional file that they send. Now, the fun part with 3D files that people don't think of, which this drives me nuts, because we have a $1 STL tier, which you get every month. You get an STL for $1, right? Now, the STL does not cost me $1. It costs me a lot of money.
I was gonna say,
Right,
John is smiling right now.
It
He's
costs
excited.
me a ridiculous amount of money because I have to pay for the sculpt. Then I have to pay for the sculpt to be pre-supported by professionals so that it will print on everybody's printers. And if it's a larger sculpt, I also have to pay for it to be split and keyed so that everything fits together and it will print on a printer that is not giganormous. So like I said, I won't name numbers, but the sculpts, we do not make money on sculpts unless we sell them physically. That is the only time we make money on sculpts, which in that case, profit margins are very high. But as far as like selling them as STLs, as digital, like because the market is so saturated, like you can jump on like Archvillain or Titan Forge or whatever on my manufacturer, you can get like 100 sculpts for like $10, and I'm like, I can't do that. There's no way. So because you're right, there's a lot of time, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of effort that goes into sculpts. And what we do is we have one artist that creates the like two-dimensional art, so the art that will go into whatever our 5e product is. So let's say we're doing a stat block. We're like, here's the stat block. Here's a mood board for the piece. Here's what we want to do. Then I work with that person to develop the fully rendered art for that creature, character, whatever it is. Then it goes to the 3D artist and we say, okay, now we need to make a sculpt for this. And we put out the sculpt. And remembering all of this happens, we're producing between 40 and 80 pages of written content a month, roughly 9 pieces of art a month, and 1 STL a month with a team of 1 full-time person and Cameron and Connor and my wife who keeps me sane, and that's it. So like and then obviously all of the freelancers that create the art and sculpts and all that stuff that is being managed through someone.
Sounds like a nightmare to me.
He's
Yeah.
pointing at himself.
That's a lot.
Red Bull is your friend.
Well,
that's I don't know.
Yeah. Wow.
Do you have any hobbies? It's like, do you
No,
have time
this is
to
it.
do anything
This is
else?
the hobby. This is the hobby right
Yeah.
here.
Do you still play games and DM at, just to at least not play testing just for fun?
So I do still I will play. I play. So every week we play. Now, whether we're playing 5e or we're playing Call of Cthulhu or playing some kind of EZD6 or Dungeon Crawl Classics or whatever, right now kind of remains to be seen. I was the Forever DM for many, many years. Probably about 5 years. I did a weekly session. And then when we switched to 5e from 3.5 around 2020, which was a rough time to switch to a new system. And then nobody met in person, and then we tried to get back in person, and it was a whole other thing. Yeah. So now it's not as frequent as it was. I am kind of like gearing up for my next campaign. Most of it, I take the stuff that I've made for critical crafting, I put it all together into something, and I'm like, boom, here we go. That'll work. Like, let's run it, kind of a deal.
Yeah, you don't have time to write other stuff on top of writing, and
That's the hard part. Is I'm like, I don't have time to write for fun. I'm writing for work over here. What are you talking? And it's not just my stuff. So like, Tomb Guardians, which is the company that I wrote for this past year. I wrote 4 books for them. It is the longest 5e campaign that's ever been written. It's over 1,000 pages long.
Unless we wrote ours for Spark.
There you go. Yes. So I did that while also doing all of my company stuff, kind of a deal. So it's a lot. Yes, I do have hobbies. My hobbies include painting miniatures so that I can display them for sale, playing Dungeons and
Still sounds like
Dragons,
work.
often play testing our content. Yeah, I don't think I have any hobbies now that you know. Watching TV. There you go.
Oh,
Yeah,
there you go.
But then I look at the TV and I'm like, that would make a really great subclass.
You're like thinking about work while you watch stuff. You're like, Squid Games. Where could we take this and put this into our content?
The fact that you're correct is just painful.
Well, the best stuff to create is the things that you yourself will relate to as well, right? Like to draw inspiration from something is the creative process.
That's something the team has found a lot lately is like if we're not really inspired by something, even if we're like, oh, the community, so like dinosaurs, right? The community loves dinosaurs, which I love dinosaurs too. That's great. But we're 3 releases of dinosaurs, and we talked about doing another dinosaur release this year because we're like, well, the people love dinosaurs. We should give them more dinosaurs. And the team was kind of like, kind of done with dinosaurs though. And the thing is, like, we're like, I'm done with dinosaurs. What about we do a time casino? And everyone's like, a time casino? Heck, like, let's, and it's so true. Like, if you're passionate about something, so like Connor, who does a lot of our like player options and that, he is super passionate about a class that he made called the Renegade class, which is essentially like a gunslinger, but because gunslinger isn't in the OGL, we had to make our own, so we did. But he loves it. And so like anytime we're like, hey, let's do something with a renegade, he's like, I'm on it, let's go. Like here's a bajillion things to do. But yeah, you're right. If you're passionate about something, if you really, really, love it or inspired by it, it's so much easier to do than when you're sitting there like, okay, I gotta write about dwarves, I guess, today, and I don't feel like it. What was that over there that I can focus on instead, kind of a thing.
So your first Kickstarter was obviously successful because you're talking about a second one. So you enjoy, I don't know if enjoy is maybe the right word, but you tolerate or slash enjoy the Kickstarter process because of what it allows you to, what it facilitates, basically.
I do not like Kickstarter. I do not. I'm gonna kick myself in the teeth here if anyone from Kickstarter backer camp ever sees this. So the original intent. This is the same with Patreon. The original intent of Kickstarter and Patreon was, hey, I am a creator. I have an idea. Please help me make my idea a reality by giving me the money to make it happen. Right? That was the initial intent of those platforms. They have now become, hey, I expect this to be a pre-order service, and if I don't get it within the time frame, then I'm going to be really, really bad. And the other issue is that for a Kickstarter to be successful, the age-old phrase, you got to spend money to make money, is very, very accurate. If you do not put out a significant amount of money in advertisements, your Kickstarter is not going to make money. It doesn't matter if you have the best art, if you have the best idea, if you have the best book, if you have the best writing, it does not matter. All that matters is the marketing.
Does it just get buried?
Yeah, you get buried because it is so oversaturated right now. If you get on there right now, you'll see 25 campaigns in a split second. There's so many. So if you were trying to do a Kickstarter, not only do you have to have something that sets you apart, so like the Mages War, what set us apart was high magic versus high tech. It was an easy to understand system of this is what we're doing, not new classes. And people are like, whoa, what is that?
It's unique enough. Like, has it been done before?
It has to be something that's unique. You have to put out the advert, so it has to be unique, easily understandable, because nobody reads anything. They look at the pretty picture for 3 seconds and they move on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling I'm feeling uncomfortable right now.
You feel a little scene there, Alana?
Yeah, I love. I'm a picture book flipper,
And I am too. That's the thing, though. This is a conversation that Cameron, my partner in crime on this, and I had early on. He's like, well, if our writing is really good, then people will love it. And I'm like, if the art isn't really good, no one will read the writing. And that is a huge aspect of marketing. So a unique project that is easily understandable visually, and then you have to sink money into advertising, because if you do not, it will not see the light of day. And I have seen so many incredible projects that barely funded or didn't fund or way underfunded because they just didn't have the money to put into advertising. So Kickstarter is a tool. At the end of the day, even after all, like, if you pull it up and you're like, oh, they made this much money, no, we did not. We did not make anywhere near that much money. If you look at that, by the end of the day, we'll be lucky to make some money or break even on the Kickstarter because of Kickstarter fees, backer kit fees, taxes, advertising. all of the money that went into formatting for it, additional stretch goal costs, all this fun stuff. Which, if you're looking at doing Kickstarter, plan it all ahead, because that's what I did, because I had seen a bunch of other people do it, and I'd seen a bunch of other people go bankrupt doing it. Was plan it all out and do not charge shipping, because you do not know what's going to happen 6 months from now when shipping rates go up by 10 times what they are right
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
and you already charged for it, and now you're up shit creek
You're up
without a
Schitt's
paddle,
Creek
essentially.
without a paddle, exactly.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. So to answer your question, do I like Kickstarter? Kickstarter, I think, is a great tool for building a fan base, for getting a product out there, and for building name recognition. I think it's great. If you're looking at it as a way to make money, it's not a good way to make money. We make more money off of digital stuff than we do off of Kickstarter stuff, because the physical product is so much harder to produce, to deliver, to update than a digital product is. We make more money in a single month doing sales on our website than we do putting in months and years of effort on a Kickstarter. But Kickstarter is worth it, just like conventions are worth it. So Origins, we lost money at Origins, but there's a reason that we go, because it builds brand recognition. It builds connections with other people. It builds all of this kind of, and a fan base that has already paid money and therefore will continue to pay more money, much more likely. So anyway, yeah, I have a whole, and this is the thing. So my degree was in sculpture. What do you do with that? I worked for 5 years as an insurance underwriter. So I have a lot of like analytical, like when I was doing the Kickstarter stuff and figuring, I'm like, here's the breakout of this percent. If this many people do this and that percentage do that, and the taxes on it are this, and this many stretch goals do that, like,
That's like two different sides of the brain, though, like completely
oh yeah,
different
yeah, yep,
ways
yep,
of
yep.
thinking.
So I'm fortunate in that I was forced into it. So now I know how to do it, kind of a thing. But yeah, if you're doing a Kickstarter and you're a creative person, find someone who's not a creative person, or figure out how to do analytical
Get that
stuff.
right brain working, and yeah.
Yeah, and talk to other people. Like, this is a huge thing. So many people jump into it and they don't talk to other people. I talk to everybody. I talked to Mikey from Legends of Ventress, which is like 4 million, to people who did barely anything on Kickstarter. Like, everyone I could talk to, and said, what did you do? How did it work? What did you see? And everyone's experiences are different. But finding, okay, where does everything kind of align, where I can figure out this is roughly where we can fall. And after I did all that, our projections were pretty much exactly what my like projected stuff was. So to answer your question again in a long format to a short question, I don't like Kickstarter, because it's not what it was meant to be, and it doesn't make the money. It I think it presents to people this idea that companies are making all this money when really they're not. I wish that there was something that they could post like, "Hey, raise this much, made this much," kind of a, like,
Right.
Spent this much, yeah.
After expenses.
like,
After costs.
and it's
yeah.
not just me. Like, I'm not speaking just from my own experience. I've worked with a lot of other people on Kickstarter. Like I said, there's one person I know who essentially went like 70 grand in the hole, because and their Kickstarter made hundreds of
Shit.
thousands of hundreds
Dang.
of thousands, hundreds of
Wow.
thousands, and they're in the hole because it, like, basically had a closed shop, kind of a thing. Or other people who are like, hey, I can't pay you because the Kickstarter didn't make enough. And again, Kickstarter made hundreds of thousands, but so much money was spent out to try and get it seen and try and get it recognized. It's weird. The market is so saturated. You got to find a fan base that really supports you, and then you also got to figure out how much are you willing to spend, how much you're willing to risk, because that's what it is. It's honestly, it's an analytical gamble of, if I know this percentage will go in, then I could spend this much money, and this is how many should come out. And there's a whole mathematical thing to it, but
I mean, you're talking about like going to cons. I mean, that's gonna the massive expense of just getting a booth, taking your stuff there, being getting volunteers or people to at least help you or whatever to be there, every time the hall's open. But like you were saying, the people you get to know, you don't know what that's going to eventually evolve into. It could be something that's fantastically financially a great relationship, or it could be nothing. But putting the money down to go to a convention. I mean, you guys go to what, Origins? You go to Gen Con?
So we have a booth at Origins, and then I make a effort to go to Gen Con. I went to PAX this year, and then we also have normally a booth at some of the smaller cons here in like the Fort Wayne area. We're trying to get one into PAX maybe next year, but I'm having a baby in May, so that probably won't happen.
Congratulations. Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, first one. We'll see. It's gonna be so we got baby in May, Origins in July. Cameron then is having one in. Or I'm sorry. Let's see. Baby May, Origins June. Cameron baby in July, and then Gen Con in August. So it's gonna be an
Okay, that's a lot.
interesting. Yeah, for the team.
Busy summer.
Well, at least things aren't going to get more difficult.
Yeah, it's fine. It'll be good. I don't worry about it. So, but yeah, so we do try, like you're saying, we go to as many cons as we can and network. Like, and that's something. If you're like a starting out creator, I started out with a printed out from Staples sheet of one of our months of content, like a little booklet that I went to Origins and Gen Con. I was like, hey, Kobold Press, look at my stuff. Hey, whoever, look at this thing. I'm making it. I'm on the Patreon. Check me out. Here's my business card. And now it's, we're handing out minis and stickers and cards and pins and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you get your baby involved, you might see an increase.
Now you're thinking.
You get him with like a critical crafting onesie, and
Why do you think he had the baby? I mean, he was sitting around one day going, how can I use
that analytic brain of his? It's like, wait a second, if I do this and we carry the 9 and
yeah, honey, I got a marketing idea.
Baby needs to
feed
eat.
my child.
But yeah, so networking is absolutely huge, and it isn't just even just going to the cons. So Mikey from Legends of Avantris, which is a huge, I don't know if you guys know them, but huge YouTube channel. They have Chuckles the Clown, really funny.
yeah.
They're all over Instagram, that kind of thing. I met him at a tiny little panel that was put on by Lucas, who now works for Mage Hand Press, who wrote the Book of Extinction, that he put on at Origins back in 2020 something. At this point, the 2020s are getting weird. And there was maybe like 20 people there. And Lucas was asking, talking to people about different stuff. And Mikey was asking people how to run a Kickstarter. And me and my buddy Nick, who were there, who had been part of a Kickstarter, were answering some questions with him, exchanged information. And now me and Mikey talk about Kickstarter stuff, which is insane because they made so much stinking money. And I'm like, hey, maybe filter some of that this way. I like to figure that bit out. But yeah, so much of the industry, and you think of it as this huge industry, but it's really not. It's very small.
Niche, yeah.
Getting to know people, putting yourself out at a convention, talking to somebody, handing them a business card, handing them a miniature or a sticker, or just shaking their hand or whatever. Is huge. So yeah, there's me spilling advice again.
It really you're right, like it's not as big of an industry or a scene as sometimes it feels. When you're inside it, you feel like, oh man, TTRPGs and D&D is so huge and so cool, but there's a huge percentage of the population that knows next to nothing about it and doesn't engage with it.
Like, for instance, my mom the other day's like, did you know it's D&D's 50th anniversary and all this? And she's telling me about it. And I was like, bro. And she was like, it's in Wisconsin. That's like where her parents live. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, I know nothing about it. There's like a big dice or something. I was like, I've told you all about it. Like, I've explained it to her. Right?
You call your mom bro?
Yeah, probably. I also like people at work, right? You're like, what? Okay, I've heard of it. What is it? And you're like, okay, role playing, collaborative storytelling. They're like, I don't get it. It's like, okay.
I had that with my dad was asking. He's like, well, because I've written stuff for both 5e and like Pathfinder 1e and that kind of thing, and I was trying to explain to him the great fuckery of the OGL and 2014 versus 2024 and PF1 to PF2 and Tales of the Valiant versus that. And he was like, well, if you want to diversify, couldn't you just write content also for like those other systems like Call of Cthulhu? And I was like, yes, but it would be a completely, that's like saying, couldn't you play Monopoly with the rules of the game of life? Like, no, it doesn't work this way. But
You don't know anything, Dad.
he knows enough. He's engaged enough with it at this point, being like, what is this guy doing? I don't know what, but yeah, well, I'm making I guess I'm living off it, so that's good. I get,
Yeah, it is. On the flip side, it's still very small, despite how big it sometimes feels to those of us in it. But it is cool to see it becoming more and more mainstream, and people who you might not expect to have an interest are like, oh yeah, I play D&D too, and it's like, oh no way.
I was one of those not that long ago who's like, role playing what? And then Bill was like, it's kind of like improv, and you'd love it. And I was like, okay.
So let's do a podcast.
Well, I can't claim to be a newbie anymore. I guess it's been 5 years or whatever.
It is nuts, and it is such a it's a great community to be a part of, because I love this when we go to cons. My wife went to her first convention was Adepticon, which is probably a little bit of a mistake, but it was just, that was the con that we were going to, which for those who don't know, Adepticon is very much like war game and paint and minis con. She's much more a board game kind of gal. We went to that one, and then then Origins, which is more like 20 to 30,000, and then Gen Con, which is like 60 to 70 or whatever. And she loves the thing that she came away with that I thought was very interesting, which is like everyone is just so nice. Like you don't experience that, and I was like, that's because we're all with our people. Like we're all fellow. You walk up to you can walk up to anyone and be like, what do you think about, I don't know, Baby Yoda, and they'll have an opinion. Like there's gonna be...
they'd be like, first of all, it's Grogu, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. But it's so funny because it's all of us are just our weird, being our weird selves in our weird place with our weird people, and we love it. So everyone's happy. And I love that environment at conventions, where you can just walk up to anybody and ask a question. And in my experience, at least, everyone has been super friendly. I think I've been to like one con where someone kind of was like, meh. And I was like, ooh, grognard, okay. But,
it is true. I find that I can talk to anybody, and it's kind of weird, but like handing out pins or whatever, right?
My favorite thing about a con is when you're trying to meet up with somebody and, trade a game or something, and they go, what do you look like? Well, 50-year-old bald fat guy. And maybe I need to be more descriptive.
Could you wear a type of hat or something for me?
Gaming t-shirt of some kind.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being our first guest and coming on and chatting with us and putting up with our general nonsense. Well, so why don't we kind of do a bit of a sign off here and just remind everyone who's been listening for the last hour, and if they don't know, then they haven't been listening very hard, but who you are, and just give yourself a plug again.
Sure. So I'm Dylan from Critical Crafting. We are an indie tabletop content creation company creating primarily stuff for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, as well as 3D printable STLs. We're a small team. We would love your support. We are on Patreon with over 2,000 pages of content, currently priced at the low price of $13. So jump on that, as well as monthly STLs for $1. So, you can't beat it, man. Get on there.
You've got a Linktree.
Yes.
/Critical Crafting.
We've got a Linktree, yes. We got links everywhere.
Yeah.
And they will be in our show notes for the episode as well.
Hi, I'm John and Rumpke.
I'm Emily. I play Kylia and Sheshadal.
I'm Bill. I play Hellcrock Tread.
And I'm Alana. I play Opal Toggle Sprocket.
And I've been Leland Steele. Happy adventuring. This has been a Sounds of Steel production.